Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with some more of the Great War, and we are on to week 196. The first tank-on-tank battle in history. The Zeebrugge... Totally did not pronounce that right. The Zeebrugge Raid. Before we dive in, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love to join the Discord and follow me over at Twitch. And please do go check out the gaming channel here on YouTube. YouTube stopped showing my funny, dumb shorts to people. Hasn't been doing that good in views lately. Upsetting. It was doing real good in like December. Now, not so much. It is what it is. Anyways, week 196. Just a couple more weeks, y'all, and we're past week 200, and we will truly be in the end game. That is... Wow. We really only have, what, 3 to 4 more months of this? I've been doing this for so long. What am I going to do with myself after? Well, with all that said, let's go ahead and should we do something special for the final episode? My dog is barking. He's ruining the fucking moment. We could have a really good heart-to-heart right here. Trying to come up with an idea to remember this journey we went on for over 200 episodes. But yeah, should we do something? Should I like wear a suit for the final episode just to be fucking stupid? I might. With all that said, let's go ahead and dive straight into the video here.
Week after week in this war, something new happens that the world has never seen before, and this week is no exception. This week sees the first tank-on-tank battle in history.
I can't believe what's really crazy is it's been 196 weeks. How many weeks since the first tank? 100? I want to say that we got introduced to the first tanks in, what was it, 1915? So like the fact that has not happened until now feels a little weird, don't it? Like we've compared the Great War to a novel. And this is one of those points in a novel sometimes. Sometimes you get these in books and you're reading along. You also get it, I feel like sometimes in Star Wars, in the movies. Something happens and you're like, wait, why weren't we seeing that before, right? Or like, why does that never come up again? Episode 1, Force Sprint. Literally, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon do a force sprint in like the first 30 minutes of the movie. And then when it would be useful to use that in the duel against Darth Maul, they don't. It's kind of, it's kind of one of those things, right? With this first tank-on-tank battle. Like, well, why didn't we ever see someone doing that before? Right? And of course, limitations of technology. But then it'll be like the question of, oh, why don't we see these strategies used later, right? Kind of feels like a plot hole in a bit when you see strategies that worked before and then they don't apply them to other situations, right? Kind of like that. It's just the comparison of World War I to a novel is just too perfect. Totally unnecessary rant, but it allowed me to bring in Star Wars.
I'm Indy Nidell. Welcome to the Great War. Last week, the German offensive in Flanders continued, but looked like it was stalling. The Ottomans advanced in eastern Anatolia, and the British and the Arab Revolt took a big section of the Hejaz Railway in Palestine. Here's what followed. Actually, something we haven't seen very often, an amphibious operation, followed. The British Admiralty report read,
God, when was the last time we saw one of those? Oh, it would have been when the Germans were kicking Russian ass. That was the last time we saw a naval invasion.
A naval raid was made on Ostend and Zeebrugge. With exception of covering ships, the force employed consisted of auxiliary vessels and 6 obsolete cruisers. 5 of these, filled with concrete, were used as block ships and, in accordance with orders, were blown up and abandoned by their crews. This was a Royal Navy plan to prevent the Germans from using the canal there as a submarine base for attacks in the North Sea. See, 10 kilometers inland from Zeebrugge were concrete submarine shelters impervious to Allied air attack. The base at Bruges also had workshops, storage, floating docks, everything to maintain, repair, and arm the German submarine fleet. An average day saw 18 subs and over 20 destroyers there, since the canal was big enough for even a light cruiser to pass. Vice Admiral Roger Keyes planned the operation to sink ships and block the canal. The mole guarding Zeebrugge harbor was stormed and a lot of its facilities destroyed. The railway viaduct there was too, but the ships in the canal were not sunk in the proper place, and within 2 days, German subs could use the canal at high tide. British casualties were 583, German 24.
Oh.
A simultaneous attack on the canal entrance at Ostend, which also led to Bruges, failed to block that entrance. The Royal Navy was determined to try this new tactic again in a few weeks. And speaking of casualties, the publication this week of Das Neue Europa estimates German war losses, killed, wounded, or missing, up to last August 1st, at 5 million. They had, however, one extremely notable loss this week. On the 20th,
Oh, is it the Red Baron?
Manfred von Richthofen.
Holy shit! There was nothing in this video. That was me remembering that. That was me remembering the Red Baron dies in 1918. God damn, he was so young though. What was that, 26? Let's see. 1902? 1912? Yeah, 26. I turned 20. End of this year, I'll be turning 26. Hold on. Give me a moment. I'm having a crisis.
The Red Baron shoots down his 80th plane north.
Wait a minute. Also, let's... Telling me that chiseled jawline is that of a 26-year-old? This man looks like he's in his 30s. Then again, he has seen war. War fucking ages you. You can see it in, like, the eyes. And kind of in the way he smiles. Just the way he holds himself, you can kind of see it.
Shoots down his 80th plane northeast of Villers-Bretonneux, behind German lines. On the 21st, the Red Baron himself dies. Shot.
Is that a picture of his dead body? Of his face when he's dead?
Down above the Somme by either Canadian Airman Roy Brown or Australian infantry that fired at him from the ground. Richthofen managed to land the plane, but when the nearby Australian troops reached it, he was dead. When you think about it, the Red Baron is probably the most well-known symbol of this war. And
yes, 100%. There's literally no denying that one. I think the only name perhaps more recognizable than the Red Baron would be Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And that is just because of how we are taught about World War I, right? We're taught the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand kicked off the powder keg. But like, in terms of probably recognizable figures, I think I would put the Red Baron above the Archduke. In terms of like popular, mythos, storytelling, that sort of thing.
Most recognizable name. Kids who don't know who the Kaiser or the Tsar were or any of the generals still know the Red Baron. So this was a major, major loss for Germany in terms of morale. And even in the field, they were having morale issues.
One thing I'm curious about was sort of what if, because the Red Baron is a popular fucking name. I'm curious what it would have been like in Germany had he survived the war. Like, would he have gone on to a political career? Kind of like, what would have changed? Would anything have changed? Because the Red Baron is the kind of man that could either be, quite honestly, would probably be someone that if Hitler wasn't sure of loyalty, would have killed right away. Right? Like, once Hitler, if Hitler was, if the Red Baron living, if we continue on the same path that the Nazis will rise in the 20s and early 30s in Germany, even if like the Red Baron lives, right? Because we can't, don't know how for certain, like, what would have changed had he survived in terms of, like, would the Germans have fought on a little longer if they're most probably, who knows, right? We can't, we'll just say everything kind of stays the same. It's just the Red Baron is alive. I'm curious. The Red Baron is one of those figures, one of those popular people that is exceptionally dangerous to those two authoritarian dictatorships. Because he is one of the, like, popular people, just really need to say like one word and they can kind of ruin a thing. Right? They can take a thing down. They can make changes. Which is why it is okay to ask to pretty much tell your celebrities to speak out on atrocities, because that is part of their responsibility as a celebrity. They got to use their privilege and their station in life to shine light on atrocities and try and help make the world a better place. Anyway, now of course to have that's a debate for another day. It's a whole can of worms.
So far, German Quartermaster General Erich Ludendorff had no real concrete achievements to show for either Operations Michael or Georgette, the enormous offensives of the past month. The Germans were just
Damn, already been a month on these offensives.
Short of Amiens, just short of Hazebrouck, and close to the pair of Mount Kemmel and Monte-Cat that dominated the Ypres region. Taking any one of those things would have been a real trophy, but Ludendorff didn't try to take one. He tried to do everything at once. On the 24th, the Germans advancing towards Amiens took Villers-Bretonneux, and this attack featured the first ever tank-on-tank battle. Georg von der Marwitz's Second Army attacked, and the attack included 13 German A7V tanks. The A7V Nixie met 3 British Mark IVs. 2 of them were the female version that was only armed with machine guns that could not penetrate the A7V's armor, and they were both forced to pull back when damaged, but the male, with its 6-pounder gun, disabled Nixie and its crew had to abandon it. The Mark IV then met 2 more A7Vs that retreated. There were also 7 of the new British medium Whippet tanks that came into action, running down or machine gunning the enemy. 3 of the Whippets and the male Mark IV were also disabled or destroyed that day. The next day, the British and Australian troops recaptured Villers-Bretonneux. The purpose of this operation was to make it possible to move up more forces for a renewed attempt to take Amiens. This operation cost the Germans 8,000 casualties for no gain. Oof. The forward edge of the Michael salient was again static. The Mount Kemmel attacks began well the 25th, and the Germans reached the top by 10 past 8 in the morning. The defenders had been swept away, and Monte-Cat was right ahead and wide open. Thing is, by now, Ludendorff was wary of big, unexpected success that took his men too far into worthless terrain, as we saw in Operation Michael. So, he ordered the attack to stop when it took Kemmel and then await instructions. So all day long, the Germans waited there and failed to exploit one of the best opportunities of the year. The British finally arrived and began filling the gap late in the day. When the Germans renewed the attack the next day, they were stopped. German General von...
Now we're seeing the Germans having, which army was having this same problem where they made a push? Was it the British? Did the British have this similar thing that happened where they succeeded somewhere, but then they just were too cautious, so they didn't do anything with it? That's so frustrating.
Von Kuhl said that if the Germans had taken Monte-Cat, the British would have had to abandon not only Ypres, but also their positions on the Isère nearby. The Germans planned to resume the attack the 29th. There was one army that was just joining the attacks, the Americans. On April 20th, they were in action on the San Miguel salient. 2 companies, 655 men, were attacked by 2,800 Germans, including many shock troops. The outnumbered Americans fell back, 2/3 either killed, wounded, or missing. American commander John Pershing, in spite of the terrible odds, was angry at what he thought was terrible American generalship, and he was only prevented from removing some senior officers by them being awarded the Croix de Guerre by the French as a boost for American morale. But anti-American feeling was really high in both British and French high commands and governments. David Lloyd George, British Prime Minister, wrote, "This kind of result is bound to occur on an enormous scale if a largely amateur United States Army is built up without the guidance of more experienced general officers." Thing is, as we've seen, when the U.S. joined the war a year ago, its army was under 100,000 men. And of course, training and equipping and sending over hundreds of thousands of men in a matter of months was not going to magically provide an army of the quality of experienced French and British.
Y'all, I want to talk about something about this. So, one of my cousins was in the army. This was like 10 years ago. Over 10 years ago. Um, uh, and he was an artilleryman. He did the artillery. That's what he was trained for. And so one of his things that he had to do, um, was him and his group, whatever. I don't know exactly how many of them went, but they went to West Point to teach West Point cadets how to load and fire, artillery. And he told me that the West Point cadets, he would show them how to load artillery, right? Tail goes down the tube first, right? Not the head. He would then hand the explosive to the cadets. They would then flip it, begin to put it in head first. That's the U.S. Army, baby. Now, of course, he never let them actually get. He'd stop them before they were able to actually load it in the wrong way and cause a big problem, right? He'd stop them, but those are the people, and they're literally being shown firsthand, like, hey, this is how you load it. Don't do it this way. They still then try and do it the wrong. And here's the thing. You have to get recommendation from your local politicians in order to go to West Point. Unless of course you're like a Nepo baby and you got insider connections. If you're just some first generation going to West Point, I did research on this when I was in high school, middle school, because for a while I thought maybe that was what I wanted to do. It was not. I do not want the military. Ew. If you're going in first generation, you don't got those connections. You gotta work your ass off for that. It's just so stupid. That's the quality of the U.S. military. The strength of the U.S. military is not in its brains. No, it is in the fact that we can just keep everything supplied for an extended period of time, longer than anyone else on the planet. That is essentially the strength of the U.S. military. Overwhelming numbers, aka lots of bombs, and just we can keep the soldiers fed and supplied anywhere in the world far better than anyone else can, frankly. It is just that simple. No one else can do what the U.S. can do in the modern day as of now. I think the British and French are the close second, but even then, they can't. Some research I've seen online and stuff, they really can only do it for an extended period of time. For a brief period of time, they can't hold it to the extent that to the numbers that the Americans can do. Just because America's the biggest country in the planet, and military industrial complex, hoorah! Anyways, that was that. This video is. This is
troops that had been fighting at the front for nearly 4 years. American divisions were twice the size of the other allies, the main reason being that they didn't have enough officers for standard division size. Winston...
if this war had happened maybe 20 years sooner, the U.S. military would actually have the leadership capable of fighting this war. Because I think that actually might have been still a little bit you'd want the veteran officers that had fought in the Civil War to be in this war for the Americans, because the Civil War, um, the way I view it as actually the truly first modern war. It has a lot of very same elements that we see, and same problems and conditions that we see here within the Great War. Now, of course, it was a bit more of a mobile war, um, than the Great War here. It wasn't as locked into trenches, but a lot of like the technological advancements, kind of the way the war is fought, is very much like a modern war. So like American officers that had fought in the Civil War, commanded in the Civil War, would have been great for this war. But by 1918 here, they're dead.
Winston Churchill, though, whose mother was American born, said that the real problem at the front at the moment was German superiority. And the Germans were influencing people who were not even really part of this war. On the 20th, the details of intentions of the Finnish White Party are published in Stockholm. 1. To defeat the Reds.
Hoorah.
2. To establish a monarchy on the German pattern. 3. To control the Murman Railway and have an ice-free port in the north. 4. To make Finland part of a confederacy stretching from the North Cape to Baghdad. And on the 21st, the United Diets of the Baltic provinces request that Germany form them into a monarchy under the King of Prussia. That would be giving up independence. But down in the Caucasus this week, the Tiflis Diet proclaimed the independence of the Transcaucasian Federative Republic. The head of the government, the Georgian Menshevik Gegechkori, yielded his place to another Georgian Menshevik, Akaki Chenkeli, who was in Trabzon as leader of the peace negotiations with the Ottomans. In the field, the two sides were fighting near Kars, and there was a muddle when one side learned of an armistice a day before the other. Since the conditions included the Armenians retreating from the region, the Ottomans entered Kars the 25th. It was a few months, over 40 years, since the storming of Kars under Armenian Loris Melikov. And that was the week, the death of one of Germany's greatest, if not the greatest, legends. Transcaucasian independence, Americans in battle in France, a naval raid in Belgium, Germans blowing a big opportunity, and tanks fighting tanks for the first time in history. The attack on Villiers-Bretonneux was one of the first big operations where the Germans used their A7V tanks, which means that the British infantry soldiers also had to experience fighting one of these for the first time. The following is from tank commander Ernst Volkheim, who was attacking that day with his tank Alter Fritz. The enemy is only 400 meters in front of us, which makes it easy to observe him. At 4:30, we climb into our Kampfwagen, which gently rolls forward as if they knew what was expected of them. At 6:30, we, 3 Kampfwagen as one group, are commencing our attack. At 6:58, we're crossing the first line. All hatches and flaps are closed. Weapons are readied. Dense fog surrounds us. Multiple smaller artillery guns are targeted and silenced. There is no noticeable enemy fire so far. It's eerie when our heavy Colossus is rolling over machine guns and men alike. You better don't look. But you can see the enemy so close by. Only the protecting armor is between us and him. You can close in on the enemy, and he can't hit you with the rifle butt or even shoot at you. It's only 7:12 when we see the houses of Villiers-Bretonneux through the fog right in front of us. We are surrounded by intense artillery fire. You can feel the impact through the air when they're close by. Later on, we find that this was our own barrage. An enemy steps outside the houses and sees our vehicle, a German Kampfwagen for the very first time, and runs back into the village panic-stricken. Some lay down forever because our forward machine guns and the main cannon's canister shot are doing their work. We arrive where the infantry is being attacked from a fortified brickyard. Rapid fire is hitting us. It's coming down like a hailstorm because there must be almost 20 machine guns firing, which we return fire on. They took the brickyard and around 150 prisoners and advanced together with the infantry. The men were cheering, "Hooray, tanks!" Hooray, tanks.
Woo.
If you want to learn more about the German A7V tank, we filmed an episode about it at the German Tank Museum, and you can find out more about that right here. Our Patreon.
And that was the first tank-on-tank battle in history, the Zeebrugge Raid, the Great War Week 196. Got nothing to add here at the end. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.